Hey, Spiralers. Welcome back to the studio. Our guest today had to reschedule.
Womp womp.
Womp womp. So, surprise, it's just the two of us, Sam and
Gina.
we're back for another conscious conversation about what we've been moving through and what we've been supporting our clients through recently.
Yes.
Yeah, we never run out of ideas because we're always coaching.
Yep.
We're always helping people move through blocks. And I kind of just want to hop right into this one because, I mean,
It's
yeah,
a
our guest
hot
canceled.
topic.
So here we are.
You just move with the punches. The show must go on.
Rolling with the punches, accepting
Yeah.
the moment, and also believing that this is leading to a divine conversation that we were meant to have.
100%. And the right timing for this guest, because this guest that we are going to have on is so good. I cannot wait for that conversation. So we're going to trust in the divine timing. But yeah, today's topic is a very hot topic. I would say, I mean, with us for sure for a while.
Yeah.
I don't think it's alive for us at all anymore.
No.
But a lot of our clients struggle through this. We also get DMs about this. And it's basically this conundrum of being able to discern when your body needs rest. Because we do talk a lot about resting. You know, we're exiting the hustle culture. But sometimes what happens when you start leaning into this resting phase is that you end up using it as an excuse to avoid the things that you don't want to do. And so a lot of our clients, what that looks like is, I'm going to rest today because I need it. And that turns into a week of resting instead of them taking actions on the things that they really want to do. And then they go into a bit of a spiral of wondering why they're so tired.
Yeah. We essentially get this question, which is, am I just lazy or do I need rest?
Yeah.
And I'm sure you've asked this question to yourself before. And I think it's important for us to mention that, first of all, I don't actually believe in lazy.
Yeah.
I actually don't use that word ever. And I think it's an extremely harmful, self-critical, it's just a really mean thing to say.
It's just never helpful.
It's never helpful, and it's so steeped into the culture. It's so normal to call yourself lazy as if it isn't completely offensive. But I don't believe in lazy. I believe that we are either avoidant or fearful.
Yeah.
And so, of course, if we are avoidant for a long period of time, we can come up with the narrative that we're being lazy. But there is also the other side of the coin that Gina mentioned, which is that sometimes you just need rest. And how could that be lazy? That's nourishing. That is caretaking.
Yeah.
That's not lazy at all. And so what we've been able to really collect evidence of within our clients is there's definitely signs of whether you need rest or not, and signs of whether or not you are just avoiding your
Yes.
intended tasks
Yes.
or purpose.
So I think it's important for us to, I guess, lay the land of when you do need rest. And I think, you know, especially as coaches who talk a lot about the body, I'm a somatic coach, you know, understanding our bodies and tuning into our nervous system is such an integral part of healing.
Yeah.
And for most of us, before we start this journey, we're so out of touch with our bodies. We have no idea how tired we actually are.
Sure.
And a lot of times, as you start to unnumb to your body sensations, you actually are very exhausted. I remember for both of us, as we started to heal our adrenaline addiction, we were the most tired we've ever been, even though we were resting the most we've ever been.
Yep.
And so then as you rest a lot, like I said, that can very easily turn into this belief that you just need to rest all the time. And again, it becomes this very sneaky kind of mask for avoidance. And so I do want to just, again, preface this by saying sometimes it is genuine need for rest. But what we're talking about today is how to differentiate when it's not that
Yeah.
and when it might just be something you're avoiding.
Well, let's share how we came to understand when it was that we really needed rest. Because I think people are like, do I or do I not?
Exactly.
And I think you almost don't even ask yourself that question when you really need it.
Yes.
It's like you know you need it. I would say, number one, there's a complete loss of interest in all of the activities that you used to enjoy. So for me, like going to dance class feels impossible. Getting on my bicycle feels impossible. Roller skating, hell no. Like all of these things that I know bring my inner self so much joy, I don't have an ounce of energy for those things.
That's a really good way to distinguish. I don't have as many activities as you.
But you know this is true because Emmeline, when she doesn't want to like do a thing that you know she likes doing, you're like, oh, you are tired.
Totally, for her, for Emmeline, for sure. For me personally, it very much is a felt sense in my body. I can tell immediately when I need to lay down or when I might need to, there's different forms of rest, right? So sometimes the rest is literally resting my eyeballs from a screen, or sometimes it might be rest from like socializing. But I think for me, a lot of that started by healing from the fast pace that my body was going all the time. And so that I could really feel in my body what it feels like to be rested, because I'd experienced rest before, and also what it feels like when there's an internal kind of, I guess, need for the rest, which I feel like is not clear at all. I guess for me, it's not as indicative on the outside. It very much is more of a felt sense inside.
Yeah, but you're more connected to your body.
Yes.
So that's obviously the goal for our clients and any listeners, to get to a place where you know for yourself within your own body that you need it. But what about people who are like really disconnected from their body? You do have to take cues from your behavior to know, because I couldn't know by tapping into my body. I couldn't be like, am I tired? I didn't know what that felt like. I was constantly running on this adrenaline buzz. So even though I needed to rest, I had no way of taking those cues from my body. So I had to observe my behaviors first. And so my behavior was like not wanting to go out and see my friends who I know I have fun with. It was starting to notice all the areas that I know bring me joy that I could not muster any energy to do. And I knew I needed to actually recuperate at that time.
Yeah, I think for me, my version of that was, I didn't know in my body right away, but it was starting the conversation where I was like, oh, interesting. Like this feels a little bit weird. Let me try and rest. For me, I think it was a little bit of trial and error to gauge, does this feel helpful? And I think maybe my version of that too is just like my ability to regulate my emotions. I feel like on a day where I'm more reactive, for me, that's just a telltale sign in the beginning.
See, but that's behavior.
Yes, true. I guess I just don't attach it to like something I'm doing per se, like an activity.
But that's another sign, being
absolutely.
highly reactive.
Yes.
Like if someone says, hey, did you blah, blah, blah today?
I don't know, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, and you just like snap back. I mean, Gina and I, we don't really do that anymore.
No, I mean, sometimes I do.
Yeah, of course, because we need rest.
Exactly. I would say another sign, a physical sign for me, is definitely if I start to get headaches.
Yes.
That's a pretty big one for me.
That's a huge one. I was actually going to say that one because that's immediately how I know it's time to close my eyes. Yeah. And that could be 5 minutes. It could be 20 minutes. It could be 2 hours. It could be any day of the week that I just have done too much screen time. I've just required too much of my body. But I once read in this book called Sapiens that the human brain requires a jumbo drain of energy, because it requires so much energy to make this human brain as intelligent and as efficient as it is. And we want our brain to be as efficient and creative as it can possibly be. And so the brain has to be so rested. And when you are getting a headache, it's a sign that your brain is running out of energy. That's literally the sign. That's the genius intelligence of the human body. It tells you when it needs a break. It's like your phone going on like low power mode or something. It's like, I'm going to run out of battery soon. You should plug it in. That's what a headache is. And so, yeah, we've commented on not wanting to do activities that you feel genuine joy normally doing. You are highly reactive. Like even road rage. Like if someone cuts you off, usually I'm just like, whatever. We're all getting to the same place at the same time. I'm going to meet you at that red light. But if I'm like, blah, like, what is this person doing? Like, you start noticing yourself just projecting a lot of your emotions. That's a sign. And then headaches. Anything else?
I mean, I guess an attachment to headaches, just other physical things. You might start feeling achy. For me, it's always in my eyes. Start to feel quite sore. I also feel it a lot in like my neck. So again, this would require you to be somewhat more in tune with your body. But these are just a plethora of options for you to kind of try to tune into.
Yeah. The neck is actually huge. So I talked about that a lot with the guest that we were supposed to have on today. But think about your neck, right? Your neck is a part of your spine.
Yes.
And I think that when we think of our body parts, we're taught to think of them as separate, but they're not. Like I can look at my fingers and my hand and my wrist, and I give different names to all those things, but they're all one thing. Like there is no separation between my hands. Right.
The wrist bone's connected to the
elbow or whatever. Yeah. So everything is connected. So when I think about neck pain, I think about this through the lens of my spine and skeletal system. Now, if you know anything about Kundalini energy, all of this runs up your spine. So a really energized person generally has an erect spine because a lot of energy is shooting up the base of the spine to the crown of the head. So whenever I have a really sore neck, I know that energy is not spiraling and moving through my spine efficiently. That's because there's not enough energy. So a lot of people wake up and they immediately are like, dang, my neck hurts so bad. They usually didn't get a very good night's rest, or they just need more rest. And so I actually use my physical neck symptoms as a sign of how much energy I have or I don't have. Because when you feel really energized, this is just an interesting thing for you to experiment with, but notice the mobility of your neck. Like just turn side to side, like move it around in circles. And just see how smooth it feels. The days that you feel energized, it moves like butter. It's like your neck has a lot of mobility, a lot of movement. And then the days that you feel really tired, really spent, usually there's a lot of tension in the neck and you can't move it as well. So that's a bit of an out-of-pocket way to also gauge how tired you are. And again, these are symptoms that you need rest. That rest can be deep non-sleep. So like a yoga nidra, we talked about that with Tracy Stanley. Can you just move into a comfortable position, seated or laying down, close the eyes, just release all distractions, no phone, right? No thought, just try to release yourself. Or it could be actual deep sleep rest. It could be taking a nap. It could be getting a massage, right? There's lots of ways you can find the rest, but this means that your physical body needs to recalibrate. And your physical body, of course, includes your mind or your brain, and that's what you need to get the things done. And so no, you're not lazy, you are depleted. I wouldn't call my dog lazy after having gone on a run and not having energy. I'd be like, he's tired, he needs to recuperate, he's depleted. Also, if you're not fueling properly, like you're not eating right, you're not drinking enough water, these things are also going to deplete you. And it doesn't make sense to call a depleted person lazy. If anything, that would deplete the person more.
100%. And I think that's what we see happen all the time.
Yes.
Is that people actually end up expending so much energy, stressing and obsessing about being lazy. Or wondering what's wrong with them. How come I'm so tired all the time? We make it wrong that we get tired or that we feel tired. And that's actually what's exhausting you.
Yeah. I mean, I had demonized tired for a long time in my body. I didn't even know what the feeling of being tired was. I just called it bad.
Yes.
I was like, I feel
off.
I feel really bad, is what I would say. And people were like, well, let's get curious about that. Like, what emotion is that? And I was like, I don't know. I just feel really off. I just feel really bad. But even saying off is kind of indicative of what I'm feeling.
Rest.
Yeah, because there's on, as in like powered up.
Yes.
And then there's off, as in like powered down.
Yeah.
And so I began to learn also the language of my tiredness, which sounded like, I feel off, or I don't feel right. Things just feel weird for me right now. I'm having an off day all the time. People say this all the time, and they never clue in that they're tired.
The funniest thing for me is that I do a lot of breathwork sessions, and this is including you, but a lot of my clients say this to me, that when they do a breathwork session, they often fall asleep because we are going into a very relaxed state. I tend to start talking like this in a soft tone. There's soft music because a lot of the sessions I do are to settle the nervous system and to give your nervous system a break. What ends up happening is people finally get to sleep. And so many times they wake up and they're like, so like, what does it mean when I like fall asleep in these sessions? That's what you said to me. You're like, so like, I wonder what that means. Like, because I keep falling asleep. And I was like, that you need to rest.
And I was like, no.
You're like, interesting. I'm going to keep thinking about that.
Yeah, it's so interesting. It's almost like when you say that I need to rest, it's like I take it offensively.
Right.
Back then. Because
I could see that,
I had so much negative conditioning about what it meant to be tired because it was immediately associated with lazy, which meant bad and shameful.
That's so interesting. I'm trying to figure out like where along the way for me, because I don't have that same fear of being called lazy or needing rest. And I don't know if it just only started after I had a child that I became permanently tired when I was pregnant and then once I had her. And also I think because I've always suffered from insomnia, it's like a generational thing. So I've kind of just always been running off of little sleep.
We did talk about this several years ago because when I was recognizing all of my deep negative conditioning about being tired, you were like, so Like if you were me, you'd hate yourself all the time. Because you were like, I'm literally always tired. Like, do you think I'm bad? And I was like, no, I just think you need to sleep more. And you were like, yeah, exactly. I just think you need to sleep more. And I was like, no, like it wasn't computing for me.
Because you're like, but I'm different. And
yeah, I really thought that I was like superhuman and I was completely immune to needing as much rest as other people, which is just not true.
You actually hated when people would say like, you're human.
I hated it. I would hate when people would say like any sort of like human need that I needed to be meeting.
Yes.
Like you just need to rest more. You need to eat more. I'd be like, no, it can't be that.
No.
Like, and it's so funny, but because becoming more embodied and becoming more fully liberated and human, I'm so attuned to those needs and I love meeting them now. Like I love giving myself what I need, whether it's like whatever, nourishment or rest. But yeah, I couldn't even accept that I was tired because I felt like I was never saying I'm tired and I need rest. I felt like I was saying I'm such a terrible, lazy, worthless person. And so if that's what you say every time you're tired, then how are you ever going to allow yourself to give yourself what you need? Because for me to give myself the extra day or 2 or a week of rest would mean for me to accept all of the shameful, like unworthy narratives about myself. So I had to do a lot of that work where I'm like, no, tired just means my body's depleted.
Yeah.
That's a normal human experience that doesn't deserve blaming and shaming and guilting. It's just a sign that I need to take better care of myself. But I couldn't take better care of myself until I actually deconditioned what it meant to be tired.
Yeah. And I think another thing to be aware of is that sometimes the less you rest, the harder it becomes to rest because your nervous system gets so shot that you kind of get past that window of being able to rest. It's like that overtired.
Yes.
And anybody who experiences insomnia or even has a baby or has had a child, you can see what happens when they get overtired. They literally just miss all of their naps. Their entire sleep schedule goes crazy. They can't sleep because they're so tired. And so sometimes
so
that
dysregulated.
Can happen. Yeah. And so in your effort to avoid being lazy or to, I guess that's kind of the point that we're on right now. In an effort to avoid being lazy or be perceived as bad, you would then avoid the very thing that you need, which then perpetuates you needing more rest and will continue to exacerbate the symptoms that you're experiencing. Like burnout, not feeling like you can do anything. And that's what's so interesting too. I guess we can kind of move into the angle of why people avoid rest. What's actually happening behind that.
So we're still also on the train of knowing like when you actually need rest.
Yes.
So why do we avoid rest if we need it? Right. Mm-hmm. So first of all, you have to recognize that you do need it without shaming yourself for needing it. But then there's like you actually giving it to yourself once you stop shaming yourself. But there's a lot of resistance here to giving yourself what you need because when you actually stop to rest, everything you've been running from comes up. Because a lot of your non-rest or your overactivity, your overstretching has been to avoid what comes up when you're in stillness or what comes up when you are at presence. And so when you stop running and you rest, that could be a day of nothing, right? No socializing, no phone, no businessing, no working, whatever that is. Sometimes that only happens for people on the weekend. But then people fill up their weekends, right? Because they don't want to be with themselves.
Exactly.
So when you actually give yourself a day or a week, sometimes people have to get sick before this happens. Mm-hmm. Now you're left to be with everything that you were trying to escape. And that's a very uncomfortable process. Like when I initially was creating this space for myself as we were deconditioning from our hustle, I guess 1 to 2 years ago, being with myself and not constantly rushing to soothe the wound of insecurity and unworthiness through my actions was to sit and feel like it was like going to rehab. And I haven't had that. It was a detox. I haven't had that exact experience, but I've had a sugar detox before when I was like actually so addicted to soothe myself because I had a binge eating disorder. Anyways, so when I didn't have that sugar, I remember feeling kind of crazy inside. Like I was not shaking, but it felt like I was. Like I wasn't physically experiencing it, but it felt like an inner quake and a deep inner disturbance, a deep discomfort. And I remember all I wanted to do was like eat something sweet. it felt like that would be the only thing. But when I was doing this detox, I was committed that I wasn't going to do it. And of course, with any detox, it's super hard at first. It becomes easier over time. And so the same thing happened with detoxing from my overproducing and my over hustling. I'd sit there, I'd be with myself. I'm like, today is a day of rest. I'm too tired. I don't want to do things I enjoy. I don't even want to hang out with Gina right now. That's how I know I definitely need rest. And I would just sit there and I would feel like I just want to open up my computer. And it felt compulsive, but it's exactly like the cycle of an addiction where like you can't be with yourself, so you pick up a drink. You can't be with yourself, so you pick up the fast food. It's like the same thing happens with your overworking. And so if you never allow yourself to be with what's there, you will constantly move into soothing yourself with the overworking, which is temporary and then continues to fuel the addiction. And now you have to continue to do what you were doing to stay away from those feelings. And so, yeah, this really does prompt you to A, decondition what it means to be tired and give yourself rest. Phase B, give yourself rest. Be with what comes up. A lot of it will be probably feelings of unworthiness that you've been trying to escape through working and constantly, trying to like improve yourself. Like people even use self-improvement as an addiction as well to their discomfort of who they are or who they haven't, whatever they haven't accepted within themselves. And then C, getting to be able to rest without A, believing that it's bad or makes you unworthy, and without B, all of the negative emotions you've been escaping from. And so it feels so good to be in C, where we just rest and like all that other stuff doesn't impede the rest. But for most people, it is really difficult to move through A and B.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. It does take time for a lot of people to feel comfortable in rest because we do get really familiar with the pace at which we move. And so one of the things that I wanted to share was something that my therapist told me as I was healing from this adrenaline addiction. And she talked about how in your brain, the more adrenaline you create, in your body, the more receptors
the more you need.
Yes. So these receptors are literally just almost these hands waiting for its next hit. And so as we start to come off of the adrenaline, that's why you feel this compulsion, because there's literally receptors that are so used to being fed at all times. And it's like going to keep on trying to get the adrenaline back in. And so that's why we have to get past that detox phase, as you were mentioning. And for me, that's why I felt so exhausted because your body literally collapses into being like, finally, we can rest. This actually happens a lot with, it's kind of the opposite, but I think this will make sense, but with eating disorders, a lot of times people who starve themselves, they then eat a piece of food and then they eat nonstop because their body's like, finally, I get nourishment and it's going to take as much as it can. And so same thing when we do finally lean into rest and actually give that to ourselves, your body's going to try to get as much as it can. But there's also going to be an internal fear of like, when do we get back?
Well, if you haven't worked through A,
exactly,
then it's going to be really hard to be in that sort of collapse and reboot because both you and I went through that last summer, maybe a little bit before that, but we each took like a minimum of like 6 weeks. Minimum 6 weeks of feeling like, am I ever going to come back from this?
Yeah.
But we had been working on stage A, which is deconditioning what it means to not constantly be producing, not have my worth hinging on what I do, really identifying with who I'm being, not what I'm doing. So that took a lot of inner work. And then we got into phase B, which was, again, minimum 6 weeks of us just decompressing from the pace that we were moving through life. And it was like the body was like, oh, finally, like I can just like be a quote unquote couch potato. I can't even tell you how many clients I hear say couch potato as like, it's like the worst nightmare.
Yeah, our clients actually call it rotting.
Oh yeah, rotting. Which is so funny because I'm like, when did we rebrand relaxing as rotting?
Totally.
Like I don't call it rotting. I'm just like, I'm relaxing. But when I say rotting, it sounds like I'm literally decaying. I'm like, I'm not decaying.
Totally.
I'm rebooting.
Yes.
But yeah, those 6 weeks minimum of being a quote unquote couch potato and letting myself be that because it's what I needed. And the challenge I often offer to my clients is be a couch potato. See how long it lasts because it doesn't last forever. The fear is that it lasts forever, so you never let yourself have it. But that's what ends up creating the experience of having to have it and it actually being long. It's like a self-fulfilling prophecy. It's like, oh my God, I don't want to become a couch potato. I don't want to become a couch potato. Then you're constantly overworking yourself until the point that your body has to be a couch potato. And then you're sitting there for like a month and you're like, oh my God, what happened to me?
Totally. And that's what you were saying earlier is that sometimes your body will force you into rest.
It will force you.
And that happens to us and to our clients, I mean, it happens all the time. The body is always trying to seek balance. And so if you don't give it to it, it will give it to you. And, I want to name one of the things that came up for me as I was in my restful state, because as I mentioned, for me, it wasn't a fear of like, oh, I'm lazy. Will I ever really get my energy back? I mean, that was maybe a low key fear, but it was more laced in a fear of time running out. There was this sense,
which is kind of similar.
I guess.
Yeah.
I just wanted to offer the nuance because I
Right.
don't think I'm lazy. Like the word lazy didn't come into my brain. It was more like, okay, like I need to, if I let myself rest for the next 2 weeks, I'm losing that 2 weeks where I could be working on this. So it was a lot of scarcity for me of not wanting to like lose momentum. Not, again, it wasn't a fear of being lazy. I just didn't want to lose momentum, which sounds like the same, but I wanted to offer that nuance.
Which is so funny because you lose momentum because you don't rest.
Exactly.
It's so funny because actually, this is crazy. Not resting continues to reinforce and perpetuate the illusion that you need time.
Yes.
Because think about it. When you're not fully rested, you have less brain power. You are less solution oriented, or less efficient rather.
Yes.
And so what could take 30 minutes takes 3 hours. And then you take 3 hours and then you affirm for yourself, see, I need 3 hours. But it's because you keep functioning at not full capacity.
Yeah.
And so actually the most ironic thing has been that we have now fully allowed ourselves to fall into stage C, which is rest without shaming ourselves or without all of our feelings of unworthiness and discomfort coming up. Mm-hmm. Now that we do this regularly, everything that would take us a quote unquote long time before that we needed those 2 weeks for dissipates. The thing that takes 2 weeks takes 2 days.
Yeah, 100%. And also, we're just okay with if something does get delayed, it's just like not the end of the freaking world. I think we just completely let go of needing something to happen at a certain time, but instead trusting the pace of our bodies. And if we delay something or we push something off, like I'm okay with that. My priority is no longer sticking to a schedule. My priority is taking care of me. And so using an analogy to kind of illustrate what you just shared, it's literally like having a car, but only putting in $2 of gas every time. And you're like, but every time I drive to my mom's house, I have to pull over like to 3 different gas stations.
Takes me forever to get there.
Yeah, it's like, but if you just filled up the entire tank, you'd be able to drive back and forth multiple times without having to fill up. Yep. And so it's really about giving yourself the appropriate amount of rest, so that you're not needing to have to do these pit stops over and over.
Which again, you can only allow yourself to do once you've removed the story of what it means to have to rest.
Yes.
Whatever comes up for you.
Yeah.
But so that's okay. So that's feeling too tired to do things, not having energy to do things. And we've now sort of distinguished and characterized what that feels like, how it might impact your behaviors, and also why you feel so unable to do it. Like, why is it so hard, right? People are like, why is it so hard for me to chill? Because you have so many beliefs about what it means to do so.
Yeah.
And your worth is still tied to what you're doing. So to stop doing is to end your identity with the self that you feel so attached to. So yeah, so many things that are going to keep you from doing it, but obviously necessary. But now let's move into what we talked about at the beginning of this episode, which is, but when do you know that you're just using rest as
an excuse?
Yeah. Because people are like, am I really tired? Or am I using it as an excuse? I did say this earlier, but generally when you're asking yourself that question, you're not really tired. You're using rest as an excuse to avoid the things you do want to move towards, but that would cause you to feel feelings that you don't want to feel in order to move towards.
Yeah, it's kind of like asking yourself if you're sick.
Yes.
Like, you'll know if you're sick.
Yeah. Am I sick?
Like, I don't know. I think I might have a tickle in my throat. It's like, no, you know when you're sick.
No, you're not sick.
Yeah, yeah. You might have like a little bit of a bug, but you're not so sick that you have to like question that.
Right. Like your body will tell you when you can't go to school that day.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think for a lot of our clients, they have that fear. You know, they want to give themselves that rest. But then when they've gotten the rest and they're now up trying to do the thing that they really want to do, they're like wondering, you know, like, I don't know, I do feel a little bit tired today. Does that mean like I shouldn't do that thing? But
should I like rest longer?
Yeah, like, I don't know. But then usually the telltale sign is when clients say, yeah, but when I am rested, I still don't really know what to do. Mm-hmm. And that's what they're avoiding, is this feeling of not knowing what to do, right? So we're a lot of times using rest as an excuse to avoid the thing that we don't want to do.
Right, but it's not that they don't know what to do. It's that they know what they're going to feel when they do what they need to do.
Yes, as always, we're trying to avoid our thoughts and feelings about the circumstance that we're in.
Right. Like, let's say you're in a conflict with someone and you say to yourself constantly, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. No, you do know what you need to do. You need to tell them what you're thinking and feeling. Yeah. Why don't you do that? Because it's fucking uncomfortable.
Yes.
Like for me or you or for anyone else who knows us to have an uncomfortable conversation where they bring up the truth, it's just uncomfortable, but we're just willing to go there.
Yes. But it's not because we're not avoiding it because we can't. We don't avoid it, but it's not because we actually don't know what to say. It's that it's uncomfortable to say what we want to say, to say what we know we want to say.
Right. And it's the same for people who keep using rest as an excuse not to do the thing. It's not that you need to rest. It's that you need to build up courage and the self-trust muscle to be able to do that thing.
Yeah. And to sit with the discomfort of, you might do the thing and maybe it doesn't go well. Can you be okay with that too, right? Because usually, especially for people who are starting something new, they can't sit with being new at something. And so then they lean into rest a lot of like, or preparing is another way people do that. Oh, I need to do this before I can do that. I need to practice this more before I actually start that. That's another sneaky way that it shows up. But that's how you know you're not really... It's not about needing rest. The thing that's really blocking you from doing the thing is really your belief about it and how you're going to make yourself feel when you do it, whether or not you do it well. Because I think also for me personally, how this showed up was I just knew no matter what I did, I wasn't going to like it. And so then I would avoid it at all costs because even if I did it well, quote unquote, I would still think low of myself. And then even if I did bad, I would equally be low on myself about it. And so I would use anything I could to avoid that situation. And sometimes that did look like, I just need to like have a day where I just, watch TV all day. I think that's just what I need. And I would kind of milk that. And it's a very disempowering thing to keep giving yourself that crutch. And it's very much like a child. I used this example before we started recording. And, my daughter goes on this diving board. I feel like I've used this analogy a lot, but it's helpful. She goes on this high diving board and she's done it. Like she literally had just jumped off of it, but then goes back up there and just keeps coming back down. She's super afraid, doubting herself if she can do it or not, even though she's done it. And so, of course, for a certain amount of time, I'm coaxing her, I'm calming her down, giving her the little pep talks. But at some point, like for me to say to her, you know what, just get down, would affirm her belief that she can't do it, right? But in order to create the belief for her that she can, it was this kind of motherly encouragement of you got this, let's count 3, 2, 1, and you're just going to do it. You're not going to feel ready. You're probably going to feel afraid, but just jump. And then she does it, and then she realizes once again that she can do it. So sometimes this using of rest to avoid doing the thing is what perpetuates your belief that you can't do it.
Yeah, and I would say another sign is that, like, if you're using rest as an excuse, you're generally someone who keeps trying to wait for perfect conditions.
Exactly.
Like that's another telltale sign. Like you might say, I need to just rest because you need to feel perfect before you start.
You need to have the right energy levels.
The perfect energy. Or you're like, I need like this equipment first before I start. Yes. Like that's a big thing for people, especially with content creation.
Yes.
Like it's like you need like the best lens camera and like you need the light or whatever.
And
like,
a mic. And
we started with just the computer we had and the cheapest mic on Amazon. Like you don't need that much stuff. Only do you need the stuff when you're unwilling to take the action.
Yeah.
So you usually have quite a hyperfixation on creating perfect conditions, whether it be like, like this week's not good because like I have this thing and then like, my friend's coming. And so like, you know what, next week it's going to be perfect.
Yes.
You often fantasize about a time when this action taking is going to be like completely seamless and like nothing is going to get in the way. But that is so unrealistic. To start something new is to allow yourself to do it messy in the environment you're currently in and to gain self-trust and confidence and courage through taking action messily. And then eventually your conditions become improved through your actions. So we've now improved our condition of a studio. We've improved our condition of a producer, but that was not something we needed to get started, right? We needed ourselves to trust each other to get started.
Yeah, I think a really sneaky thought that most people believe when they have it is, I don't know what to do. And I think one of the things that we always ask our clients is, if you did know what to do, what would you do? And it's so funny.
Know.
They always know. And that's the thing, is you could even give somebody a 1 to 10 step of exactly what to do, and then they would just find another reason why they can't start that yet, right? And so it's really about asking yourself, what am I avoiding? What do I believe I gain by resting and not doing this thing? And what do I believe is going to happen if I do this thing today? Mm-hmm. Because a lot of times that's going to illuminate, oh, well, I think I'm just not going to do it well. It's like, well, bingo, bango.
Yeah.
What if you just tried to do it not well? But so many people are unwilling to do it, as you said, unless the conditions are perfect. And since perfection is not real, you're never going to have those conditions, which means you're never going to do the thing. And you're going to keep believing you can't do it and blaming lack of rest for that.
Yeah, that's so funny. Yeah, you'll just blame that yourself for not being rested. But yeah, too, the also obsession with the perfect conditions. It's like, what do you think you get to experience or avoid experiencing through the perfection of the conditions?
Yes.
Like when you have the perfect day and you're at the perfect energy level and you have the perfect equipment and you're really feeling yourself that day, like what is the difference between you taking action then versus quote unquote imperfect conditions, aka life? Like a day where things are just as they are and you take action anyways. I think that the illusion is that if my conditions are perfect, I will feel good as I'm doing it.
Yes, and that it'll feel easy.
Yes, that it will feel so easy. Like, no, like when I feel like really rested, like when I have this camera, when I have like whatever, I'm going to feel easeful as I do it. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to obsess and hyperfixate on the conditions because that is my way of avoiding my feelings.
And it's so funny because if we could just even recycle like 5% of that energy towards you just taking the first step, like you would actually get so much more, not done from a productive standpoint, but you'd actually start making movement on the thing that you really want to do. And I think what we're really speaking to is a lot of our clients who really want to do this thing.
Yeah.
Like it's deep, heart-led work. It's purposeful. It's what they believe they are here to do. But then they're using so many things externally to blame or to use, as we said, as an excuse to not try. And it really is this safety blanket. And I think, it's so funny that rest shows up as a safety blanket because it's rest, right? It does feel very comforting. It feels very cozy. But it's also the thing that might stop you from stretching out of that comfort zone of your bed.
Yeah. And I think the unfortunate thing is that the brain truly only learns safety through behavior. And so every time you say, oh, that thing I'm going to do, well, I'm not going to do it until I have the perfect conditions or until I'm perfectly rested. You teach your brain that it needs those conditions and to be perfectly rested before it can do anything.
Yes.
And so you actually trap yourself and create this prison of perfection that has to be attained every time before you do something, which really limits your expression. Like, think of how little times in the world we have felt perfectly perfect to record this podcast. Like, never.
Yes.
Like, sure, we've probably had a few days where we're like really on and we're like, I felt really good during that one.
Yeah.
For sure. But most days, it's a Wednesday. We're here.
Yeah.
I mean, we feel regulated. That's good.
Totally. But it's like, I think my perception of what would feel ready is not this.
Right. And our body has gotten used to, this is how I show up to the podcast.
Yeah.
Perfect or not. And so it also has learned that us showing up this way is totally safe and fine because we keep doing it. But if I was like, oh, I can't show up to the studio today because like I'm not feeling like, I don't know, the energy's like not right for me today, then I actually affirm to my body that the energy needs to be right. And then it's like, but when is the energy right?
Yeah.
Like I allow myself such few windows of perfect feeling. And I actually used to do that.
Yeah.
In the beginning, I remember there was a couple times I really wanted to reschedule. And that's actually when we recorded episode 13, It's Okay Not to Be Okay.
I remember that one.
And I was just honest about how I felt, which is that I kind of didn't want to record this today, but I'm here. And I was so glad I showed up honestly in that because I showed my body it's safe to show up when I don't feel quote unquote on.
Yes. Yeah. And I think we both had a lot of those days where we didn't feel the best. But on the flip side of that, again, because I've done this work, there was actually a day that I didn't show up. And that was a very deeply a nervous system response I was going through it that day. And I had been crying to you for like 2 hours, processing something really heavy. And my body said 100% it's a no. I said my old pattern would have said just power through and just do it. But again, I wasn't trying to avoid anything. That was very much something that for me, I knew in my body, I need to tend to this right now. It wasn't out of fear that I was doing that. It was actually out of love that I was offering myself the rest.
Yeah, you weren't like, oh, like I don't want to show up to the recording today because I'm scared of how I'm going to sound. It wasn't that. It was like you believe fully in your capability to show up to the recording.
Yes.
But you just know that your body wasn't prepared to do
That's
that
a really
for that
key
day.
distinction. I actually knew I could show up fully.
Yes.
That's a really key distinction because I was like, oh, I can totally do it. I can wipe this off and, get my face ready and get my energy on board. So it was never a belief that I couldn't do it. It was me tending to myself. And I think that's when you can ask yourself, am I tired or not, is asking yourself, do you believe you can do it? Because if you do, then it wouldn't really be a question of am I too tired or not, right? But if you don't, then that's when you can have some indication that you might be using rest as a little bit of a crutch.
As a little bit of a crutch. Yeah. And again, I think using rest as a little bit of a crutch is it usually synchronizes with using other things as a crutch. Because that's like your pattern, right? Your pattern is using things as a crutch, but you've just recently maybe latched on to rest because you've done step A, which is to like decondition like your worth from what it means to rest. So you're like, oh, like resting is good. And like that's safe now. Like I'm okay with that. So now you're using that. But you're likely also creating other conditions like this place I'm in is like not perfect yet, or like, oh, I need to make this investment first. Like you have that pattern of constantly thinking something first, then action, rather than action first, then something.
Yes.
Right? Like, and I think that we really removed any, like, we kind of like completely dissolved barriers to entry for ourselves when it came to both coaching and podcast recording. It was like, we don't need anything to be different. We're just gonna do it. We're just gonna do it exactly how we are right now, and then we we taught our bodies that acting without perfection was safe.
Yes,
and then this is what creates momentum.
Well, also it builds trust because my body believes that I will rest when I need it.
Yeah.
So there's a huge trust factor too. And again, that took weeks at least for us to be able to have that internal trust with our bodies that wasn't forcing ourselves into rest because we had to shut our bodies down because we were going too long. My body totally trusts me now. And so, something I wanted to mention too as another way to maybe help, and I really want to be careful how I word these words because I think some people could use it against themselves. But I think it's about embodying this kind of thought of professional versus amateur. And this is maybe speaking more to the entrepreneur or someone who wants to start a YouTube channel or start a creative endeavor, whatever that might be. A professional, like if you're talking about the Olympics, right? They know that their body is the sole source of them doing any of this. And so they take care of themselves. They rest when they need it. They take care of their ankles when it's hurt or injured, right? They're constantly taking care of themselves. And so if they're ever injured, but maybe they can do the thing because they're a professional, they know that they're going to show up and do the thing, right? They know that line between, okay, I really should rest, and no, I can actually do this. I'm empowered. I believe in myself. I have the self-efficacy. I have the self-trust with me and my body. I can do the thing. Whereas an amateur would more use it as an excuse to not do it. An amateur would just hide behind needing the rest and milking the ankle being hurt. Whereas a professional's, their intention, their North Star is to show up for what they want to do.
The amateur also overdoes it.
Exactly. The amateur doesn't know the balance.
They don't know the balance. Like that's what makes them
an amateur.
An amateur. Like they don't know. Like a professional is like, ooh, yeah, like I checked in with my body today and like this is a day where I have to bow out. Actually, Simone Biles in 2021 Tokyo, she bowed out.
Yes.
And I genuinely think she could have like pulled through.
She could have pushed.
But she wouldn't have like meddled. Like she probably would have effed up something in her body. Like it was like not tight, and she had like done some qualifying rounds, and I think people were really disappointed. They were super disappointed. They were like, we lost our best American gymnast. Like, what the fuck is up with that?
Some people even said like, I can't believe she gave up.
Like, yes, oh my god, people were like, oh, like she like lazy. Probably they called her that. Yeah. And thank God that she is a professional.
Yep.
She knew, like, based on her performance in those few initial rounds, like, I can't pull through in the way that I hope to and in a way that's going to protect my body. I'm just going to spend the next 3 years prepping for the 2024 Olympics where I'm going to sweep and become the most freaking decorated Olympic gymnast of all time.
And change the name of moves.
Yeah. She's freaking iconic. We were both watching videos of her recently. I was watching them last night and I was literally sobbing. The beam, I'm like, how?
I don't understand.
How? But exactly, a professional knows when and can to push.
Yeah.
And when to step back.
And this is where I want the caveat, because a lot of times amateurs will say they're professionals and they'll push themselves beyond their limit, but they'll say it's because they're trying to be professional. And so that's where the line can get a little bit murky. But again, that's why we deeply need to get to know our bodies, get to know ourselves, so that it becomes easier to discern when you might be masking something.
And I think that the professional values their body more than the results. Because your results only come through your body.
Exactly.
So what I've also said to my clients before, when they're like obsessed with like finishing something, they're like, oh, I'm so tired, but like I have to do this thing.
The deadline.
Yeah, I have to. Even though most of our clients have arbitrary deadlines, they make them up.
I'm like, didn't you just say you had to get it done by that day?
Aren't you the CEO founder of your entrepreneurial solo business? And they're like, yeah. I'm like, let's move it back by a week. I even have a client right now who's releasing music, and she had this date that she has to release it on this date. And I'm like, don't rush something you want to last forever.
Exactly.
Like, you're only going to record this once. What if we wait a month? And she's like, I don't know. I never thought of that. But yeah, like a professional actually values their body just as much or more than the results, because it's like being a 3D printer, which frankly we all are. We're literally 3D printers. Like, we have ideas, then we make them physical reality.
Yes.
But it would be valuing what it prints more than the printer. But you can't print things without continuing to prime the quality of the printer. Like, if the printer breaks, you're not printing shit. And so I think about me as my body, my mind, my spirit as my 3D printer. And if I want to continue printing amazing things and experiencing amazing results, I have to take care of the source. And we forget what the source is. We think our source is the things we create.
Yeah.
But the source is us creating them.
Yes.
And so when you actually recognize this, it makes no sense not to take care of yourself. Mm-hmm. It feels like, I don't know how to even say it. It feels like torture almost. Like, sometimes I actually feel like I'm torturing myself. Like, I've gotten to this point where I'm editing the videos for my course, and like sometimes I'm staring at my screen for several hours, like as I'm on Final Cut Pro. And I get to this point where like the eyeballs for sure hurt. My neck starts to feel tense. And if I stay in that position any longer than like an additional 30 minutes to an hour, I feel like I'm torturing myself.
It's self-abuse.
It's self-abuse. And so I get to this point where my neck is really tense and I'm like, okay, I have to take a break. And then it feels like that's the most loving thing I can do, because who's going to show up on that computer and edit tomorrow?
You.
Me. How can it matter more to finish the video than to take care of me, who's responsible for finishing the video?
Exactly.
Because what if I have a finished video, but then the next day I have to the next 2 weeks or 3 weeks, I have to rest because I spent too much of myself trying to finish that one thing. And so now I don't prioritize finishing things. I prioritize me, which inherently results in finishing things.
I know, that's what I call I had a term for it. It's either the umbrella priority, because when you make you the top priority, because it's an umbrella system, everything underneath you gets solved.
It's systems thinking.
Yes, totally.
Yeah.
Whereas instead of worrying about the micro things underneath me, it's like as you said, you have to worry about the source. Take care of the spring or the source of where you're getting all of this energy, all of these ideas. And for any entrepreneur clients of mine, it's really valuing yourself as the most important stakeholder, as the most important employee. Without you, nothing gets done. And so it would make just logical, professional sense to prioritize taking care of the most important part of the entire system.
Yeah, I'm obsessed with systems thinking. I think another great example to illustrate this better is imagine you're someone who wants to solve the problem of homelessness. And so every homeless person you see on the street, you give them food or buy them a tent. Then you're like, oh my God, I'm solving homelessness.
Yes.
No, you're not. If you wanted to solve homelessness, you'd have to go up the scale of the system and go into policy, education, agriculture, and food production. There's so many things you'd have to do to solve the problem of homelessness. Mm-hmm. When you just like run around on the streets and give everyone a tent, like you might make yourself feel better and provide busy work for yourself, but you're not solving the problem at the root.
Yeah.
It's kind of like trying to solve the problem from the frequency of the problem.
Yeah.
Oh my God, homelessness is a problem. I need to provide everyone tents. It's a beautifully well-intentioned action, but it's not going like top down.
Yes. Yeah. You're just working on the symptom.
You're working on the symptom.
You're just medicating and band-aiding. And actually, this happens a lot in physical things. Like when I used to get migraines frequently, I kept trying to take medication over and over, and I couldn't find the medication to work. But guess what did work? Resting. Taking care of my body. And guess what? I mean, sometimes I do still get migraines, but I always know why. It's usually when I haven't slept well, if I did miss a meal. It's always related to that. Sometimes it's hormonal, but either way, for me, instead of treating the symptom of the pain when it came online, I went to the root and healed my body so that it didn't need to produce the symptom of the migraine anymore.
Yeah, I think that because so many people are pretty mildly to moderately dissociated on a daily basis.
Yeah.
Like, they don't understand that they live in their bodies.
I know.
Like, your body is the projector for your entire life. How your body feels is how your life feels. So if you are constantly feeling overworked, tired, overwhelmed, your life just feels overwhelming. But if you feel vital, energized, supported within your body, you feel supported in your life.
Yeah.
And so to constantly try to fix your life without taking care of your body is kind of a fool's errand.
Yeah, it reminds me of like continuously changing the bolts on the wheels of your tires in your car instead of fixing the engine.
Yeah.
It's like, and then you're like getting behind the car, putting it in neutral, and like pushing the car instead of just like fixing the engine.
Yeah.
We all just keep trying to drag the car behind us instead of just fixing the engine, which is you, and taking care of you. And I think, I'll be honest, it's a little inconvenient to do that work. And it does feel like you're derailing your journey by taking this time, but it is the most worthwhile thing you can do because, again, you are the source of everything in your life. The way that you perceive your life, your perceptions, the way that you engage with people, your regulation, right? So much of, even my relationships healed so much when I healed my body.
Yes.
Because I was there, not my reactions.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, of course your relationships healed when you healed your body, because when you're not in your body, you're not in the relationship.
Exactly.
Like, you're not even there. And I think that the reason why people are not in their bodies too is because of what we talked about in stage B, which is like everything that comes up once you stop and are still enough to be with your body, right? What are all those sensations and stories you've been running away from that you need to face head on, right? Mm-hmm. The most liberated person is someone who's faced all their fears, right? Even if you are achieving and constantly hustling and getting further and further along on this invisible racetrack you're running, you never feel good because you're running away from all your fears. I think the only truly happy, liberated person is someone who's accepted all the fears and realized that they were just ghosts.
And accepting themselves at the end of the day.
Yeah, yeah. So I really hope that today's conversation helped you understand what it looks like when you really do need rest. I hope that it also dissolved this desire to constantly call yourself lazy. Mm-hmm. Notice also if you call other people lazy, that's a pretty good sign that you use that against yourself as well. Mm-hmm. But also when you tend to use rest or any other condition that you get fixated on as an excuse to not do the work that you're meant to do and feel the feelings that you were called to feel.
Yeah. And I love how this was such a spontaneous episode. I feel like this was very much a channeled message, if you will. It just felt like this is what we wanted to say because it is so alive for our clients, and that means it's alive for the collective. And so
yes,
we hope that not only does this give you permission to rest, but helps you to discern what it is that you really need and give you more of that self-trust to be able to move through that scary thing.
Yeah. And if you're looking to rest and retreat.
Ooh, good segue.
Yeah. We are hosting our first Spiraling Higher retreat in November. We're so freaking excited, dude.
It's going to be in Tulum.
Yeah. Tulum, sacred Mayan lands. It's like the jungle. It feels it's so inspiring, the lands. We're already 40% sold.
Yeah, we released it to our community on the Spiraling Higher community call this past Sunday. And there were so many people that stayed on. We were like, if you have to leave, you can go. But whoever wants to stay, stay. And then everyone stayed. And we're like, oh, you all want to know.
Yeah, I think that because people know that we're, of course, going to host an event like this with the highest of intentions. And also, we don't offer events like this. We never have actually opened up our retreats to the public. We have hosted retreats for our shared and one-on-one coaching clients as an opportunity for us to meet, commune, do the work in person. It's so transformative. And then we actually received a lot of feedback and requests from people that we would hopefully host an event like this.
Yeah.
And so our own thought work also led us here. We had to release some of our own limiting beliefs in order to become the versions of us that are going to host this space. But it's going to be an incredible weekend of workshops, community, play, connection, and we're going to have so many amazing meals shared together. We're going to share daily organic vegan meals. We're also going to do a cacao ceremony led by a Mayan shaman. It's going to be so cool. And if you have been listening to this podcast and feeling like you want to have conversations like this in person, in sisterhood,
for days in a row,
we want you to come to the Spiraling Higher retreat. So just know that there are very limited spots.
Yes.
And to know more about it, you can click the link in the show notes for the details and the intake form. We are taking, what are we taking? We're taking a little bit of information from each person.
Yeah, we just want to make sure it's an aligned fit on both ends.
Yeah. Yeah, we just want to make sure that you feel comfortable traveling and that you have shared expectations as our intentions. So there's going to be an intake form, a little questionnaire, and then we'll reach out to you about details, how to secure your spot. But yeah, that's going to be in Tulum, November 2nd through 5th.
Yes, we can't wait. It's the next spiral for us, the next spiraling up. So yay. And if you're not already inside of our community, please join.
Please
we host a free community call every Sunday, and it's always so good.
It's always the best.
It's the best. And we just love our regulars and the newbies that are becoming regulars. And as always, people just feel so I don't like using the word high vibe, but people just feel uplifted at the end of every call. They feel connected. And I think that everyone also feels more like themselves.
Oh, I would 100% say that. Everyone gets to really express themselves freely. You get to meet with another spiraler who you don't have to wonder if they get what you're saying or match your language. Anyone who comes to our events or in person or offline, you can trust that they are on your frequency. Otherwise, we wouldn't be in the same space, which is why, we really feel so deeply confident and excited about the retreat. But feel free to join our free Spiraling Higher community as well. That's also where people find out about events faster than everybody else.
True that. Yep.
So anyways, again, details about both the free community and the Spiraling Higher retreat in November are in the show notes, and we will see you in the next one.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you so much for listening to this honest conversation. We hope it brought you peace, clarity, and a little bit further along your spiritual journey.
If you loved this episode, it would mean the world to us if you left us a 5-star rating and a review so we can bring you more conscious conversations, spiritual topics, and guests.
And we lovingly invite you to join our free Spiraling Higher community by clicking the link in the show notes to continue this healing dialogue and share with us how this episode impacted you.
Come on in, introduce yourself, and meet your conscious besties in a safe space for healing conversations between us and other like-minded people on their healing journey.
Here's to Spiraling Higher.